Good morning. It's Sunday, the day of sun. And I was thinking that today we would talk some about Abhyasa and Vairagya. There's another term I can't quite come up with. Did I disappear? Okay, I hope that you're not robbing the bandwidth. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know. When I did this earlier, it seemed to work pretty okay. I shut down both of the other computers.
If it happens again, I'll immediately stop.
I just don't know. We're continuing to apparently have some computer Wi-Fi something challenges. So we think we got it beat, and then all of a sudden we discover that we don't. This is related to Vairagya, non-attachment. But anyway, the principle that I was pondering with this is, and when I put the log in, I called it Abhyasa and Vairagya as central themes. The principle is that these two are twin foundations in the entire practice of yoga. They come very early in Patanjali's description of yoga in the Yoga Sutras. They're introduced somewhere around, I think it's Sutra 12, I believe it is, in chapter 1. Let me look at my little thing here. Yeah. It starts with Sutra 12 of chapter 1 of the 4 chapters of Yoga Sutras. And the principle that I wanted us to talk about a little bit is that these two really, really are foundation principles to all of the sadhana, all of the practices that one does. And at the same time that they are foundations in the way that the word foundation means, in the same way that they are foundations, they also permeate every one of those other practices. And that's of critical importance. In fact, it was one of the things, probably the key thing, that led me to using the name Abhyasa for our little ashram, because I had pondered for quite some years, actually, what is the most important key principle in the Yoga Sutras. A metaphor that I would use for this as I pondered it was simply, if you look at a door, look at the way a door hangs on a hinge. You can have an extremely heavy door and has a couple hinges along there, and with one finger you can move this huge door because of the hinges. So in that principle, I wondered, there must be some core principle, some practice in here that is sort of like the hinge on which everything else operates. Now it turns out there's actually many such keyword principles inside of yoga practices that you could say this one is the hinge. But one of them that struck me was this word Abhyasa. What does it mean? Abhyasa is described as doing or choosing to do that which leads to stitau. Now, I can't think of one single English language word that is a proper translation of stitau. Stitau, the word stitau, encompasses two concepts. One is the stability, steadiness, ongoingness, so to speak. And the other one is tranquility or calmness or serenity or peace of mind or equanimity. And so if you take those two principles of that equanimity, calmness, peace of mind, and steadiness, it means that the goal is to be ever tranquil, calm and at peace at all times. So you take those two principles and you put them together, and you have stitau. And so what is abhyasa? Abhyasa is doing or choosing to do those actions, those activities, to pursue those things in life that will lead me towards that stitau, which is perpetual tranquility, you could say. That's a nice way of putting it. This is the meaning of abhyasa. And of course, vairagya makes this sound very oversimplified, but means non-attachment, means not clinging, means that what I think is mine is probably not actually mine. The identities that I think is me is probably actually not me. Anyway, so we have Abhyasa and Vairagya. We have Abhyasa and Vairagya. The suggestion is that those two are a little bit like, it's an overused metaphor, but it's kind of nice. It's like two wings of a bird. And so the two wings of the bird are called Abhyasa and Vairagya. And those birds, that bird flies throughout all of the practices. So they permeate everything. We can get lost in our symbolisms and metaphors, but it's kind of fun, isn't it? And so, hi everybody. I'm pausing to look there because I get very tiny little text there that says, yeah, Nicholas is there, and Agnes and Ivanka. Hello. And a few others who are not showing up on there. I get a little number thing that's there, but anyway. So then what I thought we would do is talk about some examples of this, because I'm suggesting the idea that we take that bird with the two wings of Abhyasa and Vairagya and remember that and cultivate the remembrance. If you're hanging out around our little ashram and our ashram satsang group where we're streaming this video, that ought to be pretty easy to remember the word Abhyasa, because that's the name of the ashram and it's the name on the group that we're using all the time. And so in some sense what I'm really talking about is what is Abhyasa about, and how can you keep that in mind and allow it to be a part of your life and your practices. And so everything that you do, when you're out in life, you know, what are you trying to do? You're trying to seek tranquility, peace of mind. That's Abhyasa in everything you do. So then I thought we would have some conversation. I would let some ideas come to mind to give some examples of this to make the principle more clear. One that comes to mind is in the 8 rungs of yoga. Most of you are familiar with the Ashtanga, the 8 rungs of yoga. The first rung of yoga is the yamas. There's 5 yamas. The first of the 5 yamas is ahimsa, non-harming. And non-harming applies to non-harming of me in relation to me and me in relation to the world and all the other people, including, particularly, starting place, we all kind of know this, is the people with whom we live, the people we spend most of our time with. So, and at the root of ahimsa has something to do, himsa is harming, ahimsa is non-harming. The root, himsa, actually means, we've talked about this many times, pushing against. So it may be extreme violence or just a sort of quiet interpersonal relationship, wanting my way and pushing against the other people. So the ahimsa is the act of non-pushing against the others. So just imagine, let your mind ponder on this for a moment. If you're in a pretty good space emotionally, mentally one day, and you find that you're just feeling right on track today, and you're not pushing against the world, and the world is not pushing against you, what is it that's permeating the outcome of that? It's Abhyasa, is it not? Abhyasa is right there. To do that ahimsa, to cultivate non-harming, non-pushing against the other people in my life is a process of abhyasa that leads me to a steady, stable tranquility called stitau. So there's a principle. What's another example? Give me another example. If you think of one, type it in the box there. I'll talk about it a little bit.
Also, that when the world is not pushing against you means that you're in a reasonable stance of non-attachment, because otherwise
And it's also non-attachment, yes.
Coloring will fire you up.
Yes, because it's my attachments that will, as Matri just said, fire me up. And so they permeate ahimsa. Well, that's only what else? I guess I can look here if I'm not. You know, what is it that we do in asana? The way Patanjali describes asana in terms of Ashtanga, in terms of the 8 rungs of traditional yoga, not modern yoga, but in terms of traditional yoga, asana has to do with your sitting posture for meditation. And Patanjali describes in there one of the things to do to gain mastery over sitting posture for meditation is the suspension of the exertion of effort. So it's doing your posture effortlessly. What is that? That's abhyasa. And it's vairagya, right in the middle of that. It's in posture. Shraddha, it's in Sutra 20. How do you see, how does Shraddha relate? Faith.
Faith. If I am in a tranquil, more stable position, if I brought myself more centered.
If I'm more centered.
Then it's easier to rely upon the things that are in chitta that I already experienced. If I'm too reductive,
I have faith on what I already know. I have faith or confidence.
It's closer and nearby.
Yeah.
It seems that I'm more resting in that space of Shraddha when the mind is.
So the remembrance, if the suggestion is the remembrance of abhyasa, of seeking that tranquility, helps have faith or confidence in what I already know internally, and the other way also.
Yes.
Having some faith that, an example I think of that's pretty simple is if I have experimented with diaphragmatic breathing and I have come to understand for myself that the simplest gentle diaphragmatic breathing has a calming effect on me and my mind. If I have learned that lesson, that's abhyasa. It's a part of abhyasa. And I have confidence that that's true. I have faith that I've done this before so many times that the simple act of laying down in shavasana, laying down on my back, or sitting comfortably and just simply doing gentle diaphragmatic breathing, if it has brought me calmness all those other times, then I have a confidence, I have a faith that it's going to happen again this time. It's going to work again. And it's going to lead me to tranquility and calmness that stays with me. And this is abhyasa. And I have a stance in the mind of non-clinging to anything. I've sort of temporarily, I might have big problems in life, but for a few minutes I've let go of all that, and that's a glimpse of non-attachment. So there we have again, abhyasa and vairagya. If we're talking about samadhi, the higher, subtler, deeper experiences, and what are we doing with all of our false identities in the moment that we drop into a deep samadhi? That's sort of the epitome of calmness and tranquility, isn't it? So embedded in it, permeating right through it, even up to the level of samadhi, there's abhyasa. And we started as a foundation. It's introduced as a foundation principle, and it just is everywhere throughout all of these practices.
And then could you in a way say that the Yoga Sutra gradually just deepens the level of abhyasa as it starts?
It deepens the level of abhyasa.
Concentration, and those are all degrees of abhyasa.
It's a nice way of saying it. It's degrees of abhyasa. Degrees of abhyasa. Hi, Leela. We're talking about abhyasa and vairagya, and how abhyasa and Vairagya permeate everything else in our practices and in our life. That's what we're talking about.
Words that is not in Yoga Sutras, but Titiksha that we comes
Titiksha, forbearance.
Yeah, that is an aspect of Abhyasa.
It's an aspect of Abhyasa. And Titiksha is, the best description I know of, is, the words I like, is to withstand the onslaught.
Because you like to be tranquil.
Okay, we're back. Hello, Yogarvind Patel. Namaste. And so we just lost connection there for a moment. I presume that it's back now. We don't know. It just tells me that we've lost. What I see here is it comes up, says we're reconnecting, and a little wheel is spinning. But so I know we've been running experiments, and this thing has been working, and then all of a sudden here it is, without explanation. We don't know. So that's non-attachment. So what else does Abhyasa and Vairagya permeate? What's another aspect of yoga? The whole process of avidya. Avidya, the foundation klesha in yoga, the 5 kleshas of avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Avidya is the primary forgetting of my true nature. I am Atman, I am Purusha, I am Brahman, I am pure consciousness. And what happens first is avidya. And then, after the avidya of forgetting that my true nature, then I take on all sorts of ragas and dveshas, attractions and aversions, false identities. I build a personality, I build an identity, I construct a me. And then, as I do that, then I end up having the 5th klesha, abhinivesha, which is the fear of the loss of my identities. What do we do with it? With primary urges, what do? We do self-preservation. We defend that identity, and it prevents us from having the calmness, the tranquility. And so what do? We cultivate vairagya, non-attachment, to let go of those identities, even if it's just for a couple minutes while we're sitting quietly at meditation time. We're attempting to let go of them, and that's the vairagya part of it. It helps to bring me that calmness, that steadiness, that peace of mind, tranquility, equanimity. So once again, we see playing the Abhyasa and Vairagya, the twin foundation practices of Abhyasa and Vairagya. And that's what we're talking about here, is how these principles are introduced early on, Abhyasa and Vairagya. See, Abhyasa there. Now we came back. Now my thing showed that we were disconnected from each other for a minute, and that we lost there. So once again, our connection that we thought was repaired and everything was working. So now here we are trying to come live. It worked this morning pretty well, but now it's causing trouble again. And we have no techno geeks here in or around the ashram, so we have virtually zero computer advice on how to make any of this stuff work. So we're just kind of at the mercy of trial and error.